Hello there friends and welcome. Today at long last we have an updated final build for CAMELLIA for Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. Another one of my favorite party members, and this time we'll be going with a heavier focus on crowd control spells. Quite fitting for Cam, as with but one spell cast, she'll render most enemies completely useless, poisoning them into submission as she moves in for the kill with her deadly rapiers, while the enemies are unable to react at all, suffering for Cam's amusement. And yes, eventually you'll also be able to dual wield your rapiers, with high critical range and a lot of attacks per turn. Besides that, as a shaman, she'll also get to buff your party with powerful spells and unique hexes, also amazing for debuffing the enemies, including powerful bosses. So without further ado, let us get started into our updated Cam build. Cam is a very early party member. She comes right at level 1, which is great for full customization, or almost full anyways. She starts with skill focused trickery, which means she's most likely going to be the best party member you have for, well, unlocking chests and disarming traps. Besides that, she also comes with weapon finesse, great for attacking with weapons because she does have high dexterity. When it comes to Cam's skills, once again it's all about trickery. She even has a bonus from her background as a noblewoman. And for the other skill point, you might as well put it into mobility. Even though it's not a class skill for her, she still has high dexterity. But of course it's gonna depend on what other skills your party members are covering for you. For example, she can also excel at stealth. But for that, you'll have later a Ruchalet. You can also use characters like Wendwag. So trickery and either mobility or stealth. Even perception can work. And for the first hex pick, as always, I already have a guide with the best hexes, explaining it all in depth that you can check to the side here. So to keep it short and simple, just like with my recent Ember updated build, it's gonna depend on the difficulty you're playing. If you're playing on Unfair, you absolutely must pick Protective Luck as early as possible, because you really don't want enemies hitting your tank since you'll take double damage. And Cam is the earliest party member you'll have. Otherwise, for hard and below, you can delay this for later and instead go for Evil Eye, amazing for debuffing the enemy's armor class or saving throws later. For the first feat at level 3, as I mentioned before, this Cam will be more of a spellcaster focused on crowd controls, buffs and debuffs. I think it's a much safer way of playing with Cam because unlike other party members, she cannot rely on a pet early on for tanking. And well, if you want to have her tanking, you'll have to multiclass, and that will delay your spellcasting and hex progression, which I find very annoying. Plus, I already have my updated Scylla build for all of your tanking purposes even early on. So for our first level 3 feat, Spell Focus and Conjuration. Conjuration has some of the best spells in the game for crowd control because they bypass spell resistance automatically. And while the best one will only come at level 5+, right at level 3 Cam has the new Winter's Grasp spell now. Which of course is also busted good, it's like Grease but bigger area of effect, less duration but also deals damage instead of just knocking enemies down, and even comes with a built-in -2 penalty to the saving throw. It's just great, especially early on. Just remember it has friendly fire. For level 4, it's all about wisdom instead of dexterity now, because you want Cam to have not only the highest DC for her poison spells, but also more spell slots, which helps with buffing, healing and debuffing. Yes, she will have somewhat less AC and attack rolls, by virtue of weapon finesse and not as much dexterity as my previous builds, but it doesn't matter because, like I said, once she moves in for the kills, the enemies will be unable to react at all. They'll have been poisoned into submission. For another hex, either Protective Luck or Evil Eye, depending on what you picked before. Just remember she cannot buff herself with Protective Luck. Another reason why I prefer to leave tanking for another character, in my case Scylla, or your pets of course. For level 5 we want greater spell focus into Conjuration. After all, this is exactly when we get the highly OP Stinking Cloud spell that now will bypass the immunities of all enemies, including any demons. For level 7 we want even more spellcasting potential, which is why I'll be delaying Outflank for this Cam build. Instead, go for Meta Magic and Heighten Spell. This is when you get level 4 spells, which means you can already heighten our favorite Stinking Cloud into a level 4 spell for more spellcasts and higher spell DC. Spell DC matters a lot for conjuration spells because unlike, let's say, enchantment and illusion schools, you don't really have many gear that increases your spell DC. But as I'll explain in the how to play section, it will still be more than enough even for unfair mode. Then for another hex, it's time for Fortune Hex, an amazing hex for buffing allies, ideally before you fight a boss, since it's only once per character per rest. This one can be cast on Cam herself, however, unlike Protective Luck. For level 9 you want even more meta magic, this time Persistent spell. Level 5 is exactly when you get to apply Persistent to your Stinking Cloud, since it increases the spell level by a +2, and well, forcing the enemies to roll twice, assuming they succeed on the first try, is amazing to ensure your Stinking Cloud will hit them. Once again, because you won't have as high DC with it as enchantment or illusion spell schools. For level 10 we get another hex, and since by now we already have the best spellcasting ones for Cam, this is when we get more melee support abilities. First with Battle Master, amazing, it grants you the Combat Reflexes feat for free, which helps with making more attacks of opportunity since she does have very high dexterity. Plus of course free weapon specialization. Into rapiers, her main weapon of choice, you find plenty of powerful rapiers in the game, and they do have very high critical chance. For level 11, once again it's time for more melee support feats at long last. Finally with Outflank. Yes, I have delayed this, unlike my other characters which tend to pick it at level 7, it's just that Cam can really use all the spellcasting boosts to your Stinking Cloud because Stinking Cloud is that good when boosted with the feats we just picked. Now at this point, so level 11, if you don't care about delaying Cam's melee potential feats even further, or you don't care about dual wielding later, you can also instead boost her spellcasting side through improved initiative followed by a new feat called Ambuscading Spell, which can increase her DC slightly against some enemies, by acting first once battle starts. For another hex at level 12, go with Chant. With this you can extend both Fortune and Protective Luck indefinitely, even out of battle. It's a lot of micromanagement, but hey, it works, and it's a godsend on unfair mode, at least for boss battles, you don't need it for common enemies. For level 13, this is when you'll finally pick Improved Critical into Rapiers. The thing is, Cam can enchant her rapiers with the Keen property, which is the same effect as Improved Critical, they won't stack, as early as level 5 because of her Shaman's Spirit Enchantment ability, so delaying it isn't really that much of an issue. By level 15 we kinda already have the best feats we could want for both spells and melee outside of dual wielding feats, which I have also delayed. Thing is, because we wanna qualify for the Lore Master Prestige class very soon, we still need one feat, which is Skill Focus into either Knowledge, Arcana, or World. It doesn't matter what you pick because these aren't really class skills for Cam. Just go with whatever. Then for the last hex at level 16, it also kinda doesn't matter because the remaining choices are somewhat poor. You can pick Ice Plant, which increases her AC, but at this point she will have a pet, which means AC doesn't matter that much for her. You can also get a Meta Magic feat for free, including either Heighten or Persistent spell that we picked before. It's just that, because this is only at level 16, it's much better to pick these feats through normal progression earlier. But if you are respecting her, then yeah, you can kinda replace the feat for something else, and delay them for now. Otherwise, there's always Hampering Hex. It's okay, since it kinda clashes with Evil Eye, as you can't really cast both on the same turn, but it works to reduce the enemy's AC even further. And at last we'll get Greater Weapon Focus into Rapiers for free, because of our Battle Mastery hacks we picked way before. And of course it goes into Rapiers. Level 17 is when you wanna enter into Lore Master, because the reality is you already have all the best Shaman buffs, especially the Hexes, including the pet from Mythic progression, as you're about to see. And of course, Lore Master will continue to increase your spellcasting progression, not to mention providing with other powerful bonuses. You'll get more skill points when you become a Lore Master. It kinda doesn't matter because you already have Mobility, Stealth, or Trickery. Just spend them wherever. Then for our first level 17 feat, since we do have a pet through Mythic progression by now, which means be sure to level your Cam to around Mythic level 5 before becoming level 17 normally. Something very good is Boon Companion. This will let your pet fully scale to your level, since by default it only scales with, well, Spirit Hunter levels. And we are getting levels into other classes now. We also get the first Lore Master secret, which is quite overpowered to be fair. And what you want is Rogue, and just like with my Ember build, Combat Streak, and one of the special Trickster Mythic Path feats, improved critical for even higher critical range with Rapiers, and they already have amazing critical range by default, of course. I've mentioned this in the past, but since this is pretty much the final release of the game, I don't think they'll change the fact you can still pick this by virtue of being a Lore Master, because yeah, it is quite OP. It is literally stealing a Mythic exclusive feat from a Mythic path, but with a normal Prestige class. But hey, it still works. Anyways, assuming they change it so you can't pick it, which I doubt, there's still all sorts of other options. You can pick something like Living Finish for 1 extra attack when Cam kills an enemy. There's all other sorts of powerful rogue exclusive abilities like Opportunist for 1 extra attack as well. Even something like a Familiar and the Hair for more initiative. Weapon focus, anyways, the options are there, but yeah, the most OP gameplay changing stuff is definitely the Trickster special Mythic feat. We still want more Lore Master stuff, so just keep progressing it now. Level 19 is when you can get started into dual wielding. I know it's super late, I mean you could potentially get this as early as level 17, even earlier if you delay some of the meta magic feats, which I don't recommend. I just don't think our Poison or Chem needs to be dual wielding so early. But anyways, 2-weapon fighting. If you don't care for dual wielding, you can also pick Improved Initiative now. Then for another secret, well, you might as well pick a combat feat and the second dual wielding feat right here. But like I said, there's other options. At the very least at this level, you'll easily be able to make up the dual wielding penalties to all attack rolls for dual wielding rapiers with all sorts of buffs you'll have. Something fun you can do now is grab Fighter and the new Titan Fighter, because this lets you dual wield staffs. If you've ever played Baldur's Gate 3, then you know how powerful dual wielding staffs is, because it's how you get the highest spell DC modifier. And for Stinking Cloud, that can help a lot, since like I said, you don't have many other ways of increasing the DC through gear. It kinda doesn't fit Chem, however, thematically, and if you don't care for it, there's always the classic, very fitting, Alchemist and Vivisectionist, which does provide her with sneak attack, and of course the Mutagen for higher dexterity. And since we have the Boon Companion talent, it doesn't matter that we have 4 levels into other classes, our pet will still finish at level 20. Anyways, I'll be going with Titan Fighter because it's something new. Also for level 20 and the last ability point increase, be sure to go with Dexterity to make it into an even score, since there's not much of a point into increasing Wisdom now, unless you have a Trickster main path character. Fighter also provides us with 1 extra feat at this point, which is nice so we can finish the dual wielding line of feats with greater 2-weapon fighting. But once again, you also have Improved Initiative. Alright, now let us cover Mythic progression for our CAMELLIA build. Since this character is focused into the highly powerful Stinking Cloud spell, we absolutely want the new Corruptor Mythic ability, which lets your poisons and diseases ignore immunities. What this means is your Stinking Cloud will work on every single enemy in the game, including demons, including even potentially the Demon Lord bosses. Plus it doesn't bypass your own party immunity, so even better. For the second Mythic rank, we want more spell slots, so extra Mythic and Abundant Casting. Very useful because Stinking Cloud is a low level spell. Plus of course, Chem has all sorts of nice Shaman buffs, in early spells as well. Then for Mythic level 3, improved Abundant Casting for even more spell slots. Remember, any spell above 3 can become a Stinking Cloud through Heightened Spell, for higher spell casts and more DC. For Mythic level 4 you have a few options. You can pick Mythic critical into Rapiers. I'd rather delay it for later however, and instead go for Spell Focus Mythic into Conjuration. As I mentioned before, Conjuration can really use every single bonus to spell DC possible, especially if you are on the higher difficulties where enemies have higher saving throws. For Mythic level 5 you also have a few options. You can already pick Second Spirit and Nature, because this is what will provide you with a full scaling pet. The thing is, for Shamans, unless you are the Wildland Orc Shaman special subclass. The Nature Spirit only provides you with a pet at level 16, it's kinda high compared to all sorts of other pet classes. But level 16 is pretty close to Mythic level 5, since at this point you'll be at chapter 4. Does it matter? Well, yes, because having a pet is great no matter the point you are at in the game, including at level 16, since the game doesn't really end at level 20. You can also delay this for level 7 or 9 even if you want, but I'd rather have it as early as possible, because pets are that good. If you don't care for the pet, you can also pick Master Shapeshifter, which will increase all of her physical scores, and she does have buffs that will apply this automatically, without changing her human shape. Otherwise, there is Greater Abundant Casting for more spell slots of 7+ spells, or even Favored Metamagic and Persistent, which does actually let you increase the DC of Stinking Cloud by a +1, when you apply both Persistent and Heightened Metamagic. Well, you know me, I do love pets, they are amazing, no matter the point you're at in the game, so I'll be going with Second Spirit and Nature. For the pet, as always, the dog and the wolf are the best, but the dog is even better now because of the Good Boy special passive it has. Mythic level 6 is when I would finally pick Mythic Critical into Rapiers. Because of course by this point, we already have some nice melee focus feats. For Mythic level 7+, it's the same options as I mentioned before, but you might as well pick Greater Abundant Casting since by now, you'll definitely have up to level 9 spells already. For Mythic level 8, you can pick Mythic Weapon Specialization and Rapier for higher damage. I don't think it's necessary, however. I'd much rather Mythic Weapon Fighting for higher attack rolls when dual wielding, or if you don't care for it at all, there's always Extra Mythic, and the choices I mentioned before. Ideally Favorite Metamagic and Persistent for 1 extra spell DC to Stinking Cloud, or you can just pick it at the next level. Since you do have so many ways of increasing your attack bonus at this point, you might as well just pick Persistent Metamagic. Then for Mythic level 9 you also have a few options. Last Stand is always useful, especially if you plan on playing the first DLC, Inevitable Access, where enemies are quite busted. Otherwise there's always Master Shapeshifter, even Mythical Beast to increase the power of your pet. And Mythic level 10 is pretty much the same options as I mentioned before. You have Mythic Weapon Specialization, Mythic to Weapon Fighting, or of course grab one of the Mythic abilities I mentioned. And don't forget you can always go with Mythic Improved Initiative if you pick the normal Improved Initiative at level up, which can also help a character focus into debuffing hexes and crowd control spells. Now let us cover how to play with our Cam, the Poisoner, and it's all pretty simple. Ideally you wanna send your tank ahead, always, this is for any build, which is why I made Scylla into a very powerful tank for my last updated build for her. You send her ahead, she'll aggro all the enemies, then from range you can already have Camellia dump a Stinking Cloud on all of the enemies. This is as early as level 5, but earlier you have of course the new Winter's Grasp spell. It's not as good since it does have friendly fire, but still does the trick. Level 5 is pretty early regardless. This is all on unfair mode of course. So let's dump the Stinking Cloud. Ideally Heightened and Persistent, we don't have Persistent yet though at this point anyways. There we go. Notice that a lot of the enemies actually made the save. Well, kinda like half and half, which is still good enough, since we are on unfair. The enemies will have to make the save again as soon as the next round comes, so more and more enemies will end up failing. And obviously, you could already be sending the rest of your party to attack the enemies. As you know, half the pack has been taken out and completely crowd-controlled into submission already, since nauseated enemies can't do anything. But just for teaching and showcasing purposes, let's wait. I wouldn't send Cam to attack the enemies if there's still a lot of enemies not crowd-controlled yet. For other party members like those riding pads or with reach weapons, it doesn't matter. But for Cam herself, since she must be close to the enemies to attack and she won't have the best defenses, I'd rather wait, just to be safe. Don't forget that even from range she can still use her hexes like Evil Eye, especially to reduce the enemy's saving throws, since they'll have to keep on saving against the cloud if they pass the first time. And a -4 to the enemy's saving throws from Evil Eye is quite nasty. So let's try this Incubus here, which is closer. Oh, and by the way, you can stack Evil Eyes from Ember and Camellia so long as they're coming from a different class like Witch and Shaman. So let's have Ember drop an Evil Eye here. Also saving throws. This is of course amazing for your tank as well, because Scylla now only has to care about half the enemy pack attacking her instead of all of them. Obviously, if you were to send the rest of your party like my big two-handed character here, the enemies will be mostly dead already. But anyways. See, the enemies already had to save again, and we got 2 more enemies hit with Stinking Cloud, so now almost the whole pack has been crowd controlled already, with just 1 spell. And it is a spell that you'll have many casts per day even, because of Heightened Spell, and Abundant Casting as a mythic ability. So yeah, by now you can just send Camellia to attack the enemies just fine. Don't forget, you might switch from the staffs to a rapiers just that at this point. It's kinda early in the game and I don't have the best staffs yet for spell DC boosts.
I'll cut you wide open.
But yeah, at this point you just send Cam to attack the enemies as they slowly die choking their own breaths, because they can't retaliate at all. Which means it doesn't matter if you won't have high AC. Plus of course, the rest of your party, even just 1 big bruiser, is enough to easily handle all these enemies even on unfair, when they have already been super crowd controlled. By the way, I didn't buff my main character with something very important, which is the Delay Poison Communal spell, which will make your whole party immune to poison effects for 1 hour of real time, which is more than enough for any dungeon of this game. This can be cast from anyone, ideally a cleric like Social. And yeah, don't forget to do it, otherwise you'll get nauseated yourself, which is crippling. But this is why Scylla has been able to stand here just fine. The same for Cam herself. Now later in the game, don't forget that when you have access to meta magic rods, especially quickened ones, this is better for bosses, but you can already start battle by dropping an Evil Eye against the enemy saving throws. And then after that, because it's a standard action, you follow it up with a quickened Stinking Cloud, which will be cast instantly, so that the enemy will already suffer from the -4 built-in debuff from Evil Eye Hex. I know a lot of players will ask and complain about the fact, well, because Stinking Cloud is Conjuration, you don't have that much gear to support it, especially for a non-main character, which means Cam's DC won't be the best, it will be around low 40s, the maximum being around 43 for her. But here's the thing, this is more than enough for almost any common enemy you fight, including the mythic big demons like Balor and Marilith. And for bosses like the Demon Lords, don't forget you have a lot of ways of reducing the enemy saving throws. As I mentioned before, you have Evil Eye from Cam, that stacks with Ember's Evil Eye for -8. Most importantly, Social's Madness domain Vision of Madness ability can reduce the enemy saves potentially by a -10 just by itself, which is extremely powerful, as I'll show in my updated build for him. Plus, depending on your mythic path, you also have different ways. Angel has a -aura, AZATA can increase the DC of party members, the same for Demon, and so on. Lastly, don't forget, Cam isn't just about spamming Stinking Clouds, she can still attack, especially late game when the tough enemies start appearing, and of course has a super solid spellbook with heals and buffs. Speaking about hexes, don't forget you can ambush enemies with Cam's hexes, especially Evil Eye. You just select something like Armor Class, which is the most useful early on, click on the enemy before they have detected you, Cam will then start her animation, as you can see here, but before she actually, let's say, throws the hex at the enemy, have all of your party members charge at the enemy, the melee ones anyways, to ambush him.
Together we stand.
This way you can ambush the enemy with all of your party members, including those that will not attack.
You've crossed the wrong mongrel.
This way, as soon as Cam drops the Evil Eye, the enemy is already affected with it. The rest of your party will already be sent charging and rushing, which of course highly increases the chances you hit enemies, even against nasty annoying enemies with super high AC. On unfair mode, of course.
I am your end.
There we go. It's almost dead. Actually dead already. Besides that, for more hexing potential, don't forget you should always buff your main tank with protective luck before battle starts, because it's cheap and doesn't cost anything. Now let's discover gear for our cam updated build. For the amulet slot, for most of the game you're kinda stuck with Cam's unique amulet, but eventually you can go with either her second special amulet, that comes from her last personal quest and has a lot of powerful stacking benefits, including bonuses to AC, temporary HP and also saving throws. The thing is, nowadays, since we are going with a crowd control focus, I'd much rather go with the Heartstone of the Night Hag Queen, as it is the strongest source of extra spell difficulty class. For the amulet slot anyways, and our Stinking Cloud spell can really use it. For armor, she can cast spells in light armor just fine, even up to medium armor as a shaman, but since she does have decent enough dexterity, just go with chain shirts, especially mithril chain shirts later on. Ultimately you can also go with haramakis when you get high enough dexterity bonuses, to bypass the, dexterity cap to your AC that even mithril chain shirts have. For robes and shirts you can kinda go with anything you want, until you get the very powerful Robe of the Seven Sins for the highest spell DC boost possible. For belts, just belts of dexterity early, later belts of, well, physical perfection for bonuses to all stats. Gloves also kinda don't matter much, especially because as far as Fencer's Gift for the bonus to dual wielding, well, for our cam build this time we are only picking dual wielding rather late in the game. But before you can go with anything. For the boot slot, however, you absolutely want the Spirit Trackers ultimately at Chapter 4, since it is pretty much the only unique Shaman gear. And extra uses of your Spirit Weapon is pretty good, since Cam at this point can enchant her weapons with all the elemental effects possible, and enemies will not be able to resist it. For helmets, at first Headbands of Wisdom we want as high spell DC possible, ultimately Mental Perfection Headband like Darkness Caress for the highest bonuses to all mental stats. For glasses, the best option later is Rasmir's Mask, since it does let you cast the first spell as a free action, great for dumping a crowd control spell on the enemy, or even doing it twice if they save against it on the hardest difficulty mode. Besides that, the +8 bonus to all mental stats is amazing, and you do get this one chapter earlier than, well, Darkness Caress. But if you'd rather leave it for the main character or someone else, you also have the Rascal's Goggles for the huge bonus to Perception and most importantly Trickery at Chapter 4. For cloaks, just a classic Cloaks of Resistance with the highest modifier possible. For rings, early on you have the Conman's Ring, which of course increases your Trickery, amazing for Cam. But ultimately I like Rings of Evasion since she does have decent enough dexterity even if you don't focus on it, as she'll help avoid spell damage, and also the Bane of Spirit Special Crusade Relic Ring. This can be equipped on any character to be fair. I just like it on Cam because of her high dexterity and the fact her Spirit Weapon enchantment can grant her multi-elemental damage on the main hand weapon. With this ring you can convert all this extra elemental damage into irresistible force type, which of course is great because you can bypass the damage reduction of most late game enemies, especially for minor elemental damage. Bracers kinda don't matter, I just have Abrupt Onslaught here for the bonus to Trickery. And the extra sneak attack damage can help if you went with a Vivisectionist multiclass. Now let us cover weapons and Quickslots. For weapons you actually have dual weapon sets. The first one is for crowd control spells, so Stinking Cloud. And of course you want staffs to boost our DC to the max, starting with Quarterstaff of the War Mage from Chapter 3 onwards, as it has a very nice +2 bonus to the DC of your Stinking Cloud. And ultimately, if you went with the Titan Fighter multiclass dip, you can dual wield it with the new Sin Mage's Staff for an extra point of DC. Does it matter? I mean, it's just a +1 to your DC, as this is much better on characters based on intelligence because of the bonus as untyped. Still, like I mentioned many times before, Stinking Cloud doesn't really have the luxury of all the enchantment bonuses from gear to spell DC, since it is Conjuration, so every extra bonus matters. Mostly for unfair and hard mode, but War Mage is enough. Besides that, we have her classic rapiers, of course. At the beginning of the game you'll be just one-handing them, but later you get to dual wield as well. There's plenty of powerful rapiers. For example, you have the Holy Rapier from a merchant at Dresden, but the best options are first, the Translucent Needle of Astonishment, which comes from Cam's last personal quest, if you choose to kill a certain NPC there. It's already evil outside your bane, so amazing against demons, and can even paralyze enemies with a decent enough wield DC on the first strike every round. Because even if they save against it, they become staggered, which is crippling by itself, so it's amazing. Then for the offhand we have the Interceptor Rapier, which can increase your attack of opportunity rolls and damage. Even provides you with one extra attack if you make the killing blow. Oh, and I almost forgot, but be sure to equip any party member, ideally someone that will be meleeing, so close to the enemies, with the Undying Love of the Hopebringer Heavy Shield. Its unique ability, Dark Aura, will increase the DC of all of your poison spells, which of course includes Stinking Cloud. As the name itself implies, it's an aura, so doesn't have to be equipped on Cam herself. Besides that, it's just, meta magic and spellcasting boosting stuff. Like Quicken, meta magic rods, most importantly you have variants for all the spell levels pretty much. Even the lesser Quicken meta magic rod can already help, because well, Stinking Cloud is a level 3 spell. Extend meta magic rods as well, because Cam has a lot of powerful buffs from her Shaman spellbook. Also the Imp pet for the profane bonus to trickery, which really helps. And that's mostly it. Oh, don't forget, if you didn't get the second spirit nature for the pet, you can get a free pet through the Triceratops statuette. It just won't really fully scale to your level. But does come earlier at chapter 3 instead of 4, for our Cam build anyways. Well, alright friends, so this was it for our updated Cam build. The next build is most likely going to be Social as our domain lore, the must-have for any party, especially on unfair mode. If you found this guide useful, as always, please remember to like, subscribe, and also consider becoming a channel member if you can. I really appreciate your support. Thank you for watching, and see you next time, friends.